roaring winds of the Caspian Sea. La rhesus glossitis, et mass laryngitis, la voce to me. Now sing.
For the first time at a convention on the East Coast, I present to you, eventually, Pat Carroll! There she is.
Wherever you would like, madam. Consummate show person. Wherever you would like, wherever you're comfortable.
All right, I'll sit right here.
There you go.
Now,
You
listen,
get the purple one
only
because that's
reason
appropriate.
I use this, Jim, because the minute people see you with the cane, they worry about you. Don't worry about me. I've had 2 knees replaced and 2 hips. Hips, hooray.
That means she's practically bionic.
I am totally bionic.
This is Pat Carroll. I don't know who's more excited about this, anyone out there or myself, because this lady has had a career in entertainment going back to, I think you said yourself.
I think it was before the Civil War.
1947, is that correct? When you were, do we want to put a number on that? When you were 19 or 20?
I just turned 86, you figure out.
I'm not good at math. I went to Florida public schools, Pat. That's a true thing. I did.
You're under fire.
So she began. You began on stage, or?
Yes, I did. I fell in love with the theater when I was very young, and I had.
Let's hold that up just a little closer.
Can you hear me now? I really did. I fell in love with the theater by reading in the public library, and I read everything else. I'd even gone through the aviation department, and I ended up in the drama section. And I didn't know about drama, so I picked up a book, and I read the title, and it was a play. And it was called The Passing of the Third Floor Back by Jerome K. Jerome. And I thought, well, I'll see what this is like. I began reading it. I slipped to the floor and continued to read it because there was a little Cockney maid in it. And I suddenly discovered I wanted to be that maid. I wanted to do that, and I fell in love with the theater.
Have you ever gotten to do that role?
No. In fact, years later, Helen B. said to me, God bless her, a lady of the first order. And Helen said to me, Pat, how did you come to the theater? And I told her about reading this play. She threw her beautiful Irish head back and screamed with laughter. She said, Jerome K. Jerome, I haven't heard his name in 60 years. There I was, madly in love with going on the stage. And one day I was crying in my room. And my mother came in and she said, Patsy, they called her Patsy. She said, Patsy, what's wrong? And I said, Mama, I want to go on the stage and I don't know how to get there. She said, that's simple. Bring me the phone book. And I said, the phone book? And she said, yes, the phone book, please. So I wrote up the phone book and she flipped through it like this, and all of a sudden she said, here it is, the Catholic Actors Guild called them and told them you want to go on the stage. And I said, Mama, I can't. She said, yes, you can. If there's anything you want to do about this desire, you have to do it. Now that was a wise mama. So I called the phone number she gave me, and a gentleman answered. I was scared to death. I was so scared. I must have been 13. You know how scared you are when you're 13. And so this gentleman answered the phone. I said, hello, and my hands were shaking. And I said, hello, my name is Patricia Carroll, and I want to act. And he said, well, you called the right number. And he told me about an apprentice program, and that you would have to spend 6 months, and you'd be in one-act plays, and then you would work backstage, and you'd earn your stripes. And I said, well, could I join? And he said, certainly, come down here. I said, well, my daddy will have to drive me because I can't drive. And God bless my dad. He drove me down there and signed up. And the first play I did for them was a little choice bit called The Bird on Nellie's Hat. And the next thing I did within 6 months, I played the sister in our town. And from there on in, rockety-bockety-boo. So you see, my mother got me in the show business via the Yellow Pages.
It's just that simple. That's something for you to walk away with. If you want to be in show business, just look it up in the Yellow Pages.
But isn't that wise of a mother to say, no, if you want this, if you want to do it, you're going to have to do it yourself. And she didn't mean the major things, but the simple things like calling up, getting information, finding out about things. And it applies to everything you do. You do it yourself if you want to do it. Find out. Get your own information. You young people, you can do it. You're bright as buttons. Go for it.
Let's hear it.
Yeah!
That takes care of the first question. How did you get into showbiz? So that's over. So you went from the stage and continued on a stage career as well as being on television.
And I have to be honest, Jim, of all the medium, TV, films, or the theater, I still love the theater the best because it has a live audience. In other words, we exchange. We don't have to have a camera, and we don't have to have a screen. It's you and me in this together, baby, and I like it that way. And they can either bite you or love you. You know, it doesn't matter.
I think they know.
We love you.
There is a litany of credits for Ms. Carral for TV. My particular favorite part of your career, aside from The Little Mermaid, which we'll get to, was your comedy variety shows that you did in the 50s and 60s. Caesar's Hour, one of my big favorites. Danny Kaye, Red Button, and Red Skelton, both Reds. Mickey Rooney, Jimmy Durante, Mary Tyler Moore, now more current stuff, Laverne and Shirley, The Love Boat, Too Close for Comfort. She was also a voice actor before Little Mermaid, doing the pup named Scooby-Doo, Rescue Rangers, Goofy Movie, Pound Puppies. She was the bad guy, the go-to bad guy, Katrina Stonehurt?
Yes, I think that was it. Yeah.
Garfield specials, and for the anime fans, My Neighbor Totoro. She was Granny on that.
Yes.
Then, mixed in there is some theater stuff. You were on the stage production of Cinderella that was filmed. That's the...
At CBS for 10 years.
Yeah.
No. Of course, I never aged. The film got older, but I never aged.
Of all of those television credits, what is a particular favorite memory of yours? Somebody that you were, because there are fans of yours here, who is somebody that you were a fan of that you got to work with during your television career?
Right in Cinderella.
Yeah.
Walter Petrie.
Yeah.
I loved Walter Petrie. Yes, bless you for that. He was a wonderful man, a beautiful actor, and he and Ginger Rogers, whom I also admired greatly, played the king and the queen in Cinderella. And I was the biggest fan in the world. I would just do anything to talk to them. You know, I'd say, how are you doing? Have any shots today or anything? You know, just anything to keep them entertained or whatever. But it was during that production of Cinderella that we had rather a disastrous moment. If you saw it, you remember in the wedding scene they had horses going to the wedding. Well, those were live horses. And as horses are wont to do, they misbehaved. So the director on the squawk back said, Joe was the property fella. He was head prop. He said, would somebody get Joe out here and clean up our gifts from the dear horses? So we all sat around and waited for Joe to show up. And again, from the squawk box came the director saying, can someone please find Joe? We've got to get on with this scene. So all of a sudden, out walks on stage Joe with a broom and a band. And he stands over the gifts from the horses just looking at it. And all of a sudden the director says, Joe, can we get on with it, please? We've got to finish this film. And Joe simply said, no, until it stops steaming, it belongs to special effects. So that was a very, and Leslie Ann Warren in Cinderella, I thought was simply lovely. And the best thing she's done since was in that marvelous film with, it's called Victor Victoria, with the wonderful singer Julie Andrews and Jim Garner. Or was it Jim Garner? I think it was. She was superb in that. She played a little hussy, a little showbiz hussy. She was marvelous. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Thank you for coming.
Yes.
All right, and through all of that, you became Ursula. I forgot to use it.
Yes. I'm keeping you close.
The movie came out in '89. When did you hear about it first? About the casting and how did all of that begin?
Didn't it come out in '90? Because I was auditioning for it in '89.
I could be wrong. Most likely,
So
if you're telling me you were in it, I just watched it.
Don't trust me, I don't know what day it is. So the agent called me and asked me if I would like to audition. I said, like to. I have adored Disney products since I was a kid. I've watched everything, I love everything. Of course I'd love to audition. So they set it up, I went out and auditioned 3 times for singing, 3 times for voice. And I didn't hear, and I didn't hear, and I didn't hear. I thought, well, guess I didn't get it. But about a year later, they called. They had hired another actress in the meantime, and she didn't work out. So they called back and asked me if I'd do it. Asked me, I would crawl on my hands and feet to do it. I love that role so much. What a marvelous role! How many times do you get to act way over the top? Not often, but with that girl, you couldn't help acting over the top. I mean, she was written that way. And do you know what I thought of her as? An ex-Shakespearean actress who sold used cars. Nice! Makes sense, doesn't it? That's the way I plan to play it, Jim. You know, but how often do you get a chance to play that kind of role? Number one, villains are the best characters in the world for actors. They are just... It is true, because they do all the naughty things we all want to do and don't have the guts to do. Yeah, you know, that's true. But when, as an actor, you get to do those big things and go big voice, that's pretty doggone exciting. And I should know.
And I bet people ask you to do the voice all the time. Once they know you are Ursula.
And I usually do it for them, because if you get a kid this big who doesn't believe you are, you have to prove it.
And scare them.
Scare them to death, and they have to go home. But I'll never turn down a child, never.
Which leads me to a next thing. I have a favor to ask of you.
Yes, I'll do anything.
Right here, a little side to read as Ursula. Many of you may be familiar with this. This isn't something that Ursula says in any movie, but it is Disney related. Should I give it away or should I? It's from the Haunted Mansion.
Let me cough. Welcome, mortals, to the Haunted Mansion. I am your host. Your ghost host. That can take it out of you. Our tour begins here in this gallery, where you see paintings of some of our guests in their corruptible mortal state. Kindly step all the way in, please, and make room for everyone. There's no turning back now. Your cadaverous pallor displays an aura of foreboding, almost as though you sense a disquieting metamorphosis. Is this haunted room actually stretching? Or is it your imagination? And consider this dismaying observation. This chamber has no windows and no doors, which offers you this chilling challenge to find a way out. Of course, there's always my way.
Do you have time to take a few questions? Sure. This is the time where you raise your hands and ask a question.
Now, Jim, I can't see out there. Can you?
Barely. I'll have to step forward a bit.
All right, because I can't.
I have a question here.
Where are? Oh, sorry, I was looking over here.
Where are you? Right. Oh, there we
Where are
are.
you? Where are you?
On the aisle.
Okay.
Just no, over here. Hello. Hi.
In,
Straight ahead.
in that direction. Right there.
I'm awfully sorry. Forgive me. I usually have my dog with me.
So, how do you feel now that Disney and The Little Mermaid is becoming more popular?
Well, I'm extraordinarily happy because nobody deserves it more than the Disney studio. I happen to respect them beyond all measure. They are the fairest people to work for, and they make you work your hardest, which I happen to love. And I think that the success of this film is based on their watching it as if they were the Ford Motor Company watching each car being made. They believe in quality, they stand for quality, and every time we would shoot something or do a recording, it would go upstairs to be approved, and if they didn't like it, it came back downstairs and we had to redo it. I happen to like that because it means people are looking for as close to perfection as they can get. Is that all?
On that thought, you have been the voice, and you're the only one that has done the voice since the movie has come out.
Yes.
You've done the subsequent sequel as quick trivia. What was the name of this sister? Morgana. That's right. You played the voice of Morgana, and then well, that's true. You know, you were there.
I was Thank you for reminding me.
I'm glad to help. The Kingdom Hearts games, I'm sure there's a lot of people the attraction, the ride, and the show, and so many other things, the parades. Is there anything coming out that you could talk about, or that you even know of, that you have been asked to do recently?
Yes, in fact, I was in
Exclusive.
Jacksonville Beach during the month of April, and I did a recording for the 3D Little Mermaid coming out next year.
I knew that it was coming out, but I wasn't sure if they had you do any extra stuff. Was it for the menus or?
I think it was for the opening. Whether they use it or not, I don't know, but I recorded it. And Ursula and Flotsam and Jetsam are in a huge movie house, you know, bigger than this. And she is there for an evil purpose. She wants to get all the people to sign a contract with her like little Ariel did. So she is coming, she's being so charming. Oh, you darling. And then all of a sudden, all these iPads go and fall, right? So there's an iPad for every person in the audience standing there with pins going, oh, look at them, and so Ariel just says, come on, boys, we've done our job. And I'm thinking, oh, I like it, I hope they keep it.
Another question?
Here you go.
Hi, Miss Carol, could you speak a little about your fall stuff that you did on Broadway?
How did did you know about that?
I'm a longtime Shakespeare fan and a longtime fan of yours. So.
Well, bless your heart. Well, that was kind of an ambition of mine. Number one, I never thought I would do any Shakespeare. And in my heart, I wanted so badly to do it. And the first Shakespearean role I wanted to do was the nurse in Romeo and Juliet. Because I'll tell you, if we all get up into heaven, I want to talk to that actor who did that role, because I have a lot of questions to ask. But the second thing, I wanted to play Sir John Falstaff. But I knew in all of the Henrys, I couldn't do that, because that's totally a male role. Here's a man who is mentoring a young man in a Prince of the Realm. But I knew in The Merry Wives of Windsor, I could do it and I could get away with it. I adored it. I just loved it. And the thing that was fascinating to me, now I'd worked with this Shakespearean company for at least 3 or 4 shows.
Was it the Folger or the Shakespeare?
Folger.
Okay.
Which was then, the Folger became the Shakespeare Theater. The Folger Theater was the historical theater in Washington. It's still there, but the Shakespeare Theater has moved elsewhere and is their own...
Bigger, better now.
Bigger, better, all kinds of things. So, when I told Michael Kahn, who was the founder and the director, he said, what else do you want to do in Shakespeare? And I said, well, Sir John Falstaff. He said, Pat, you can't do that. I said, yes, I can. In Merry Wives of Windsor, I could get away with it. And he thought a minute, and he said, I think you could. So he said, we'll do it. Now, I had worked with the company, so I knew all the fellas, I knew all the ladies. But in rehearsal, all the fellas were patting me on the hand, or chucking me on the cheek, or and Michael finally said, ladies and gentlemen, we have a problem here. Our wonderful Pat is now playing a male character. I don't think you want to do that. And they all said, oh no, we won't do it. We won't do it. Of course they kept doing it. And so finally, it wasn't until I put on male garb and facial hair, I had a mustache and sideburns, you know, and floppy hair here, that the guys stopped doing that to me. They didn't do it anymore to me. Except now they would go, POM! On my father. You see baseball players doing that all the time. But I tell you, I had so much joy in learning that role and in trying to figure out what the fat knight would do in the hands of a woman. And I just enjoyed it enormously. I enjoyed every bit of it, except on school matinees, the company would come out and answer any questions the children had, and I loved doing that. And I came out, and there was one little black boy right on the end of the room. When I came out dressed in civilian clothes, no longer in costume, he went, you play tonight? And I said, well, yes, I did. He said, where are your bosoms? And I said, well, darling, in case you didn't notice, remember that big belly I had? Well, the lovely people in the costume department extended that up to my neck and then just brought it down so my bosoms were hidden. And he said, I don't understand it. That marvelous. God bless children. God bless them. But I have to tell you, that was one of the joys of my life, playing Sir John Falstaff. And I have such respect for actors of Shakespeare in our country, in England, anywhere they do it. It's the most marvelous work in the world to do. It's very hard, but it is so rewarding. And there is such joy in it. And we have so many companies starting all over the country in parks. And they have one in LA now, in Los Angeles. They have a Shakespeare company in the park. I wish you folks would have one. I just think it's so good, and you find out that Shakespeare isn't a dusty, crusty old thing. He's alive and sparkling like we all are, and he's writing about us. We're all in those plays, you know. So if you don't know Shakespeare, you don't like Shakespeare, watch a company of actors trying awfully hard to play Shakespeare, and I think you're going to find some excitement. I always have. Thank you for that question. That was lovely.
Next question? Over here.
Can you sing something for us from the movie?
So embarrassed. thought he was going to cry. And you know, I've never learned it since. Isn't that dreadful? I make you a promise. If we meet here a year from today, I'll learn the lyrics. Poor unfortunate soul. That's it.
Once you do it, it's recorded. You don't have to do it again.
Well, I didn't
And
have
then we also have another exclusive. Pat has just confirmed that she's here for next Mayhem. I get 10% of that, by the way.
We don't even have to sign a contract.
Brad is looking at me mad. Another question.
Going back to your 1965 Cinderella, what was your favorite song from that musical?
What was my? It wasn't the Stepsisters' Lament. I think it was a minute ago I met you. La 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 la. Isn't that a pretty tune? Thank you. That was a lovely score. The book was a little creaky, but I thought the music was marvelous. I wish I didn't know the words to that too, but I don't. I just learned the tunes. I never learned the words, which is difficult
Google
when
it
you come
for
to
you
the
later. We'll look it up. We'll Google it for you. Next time we'll have a computer.
Right here.
We'll just pull it up. Another question for Pat?
Oh, sorry.
Of all of your sitcom roles, what was your favorite?
I think my favorite was probably the one on Danny Thomas, because I had such a good time, and Danny Thomas and Sheldon Leonard were such good bosses. You know, they were just wonderful people, and the entire company was grand. And I loved the Danny Thomas show. You all look rather young, but in the Thomas show, every week it seemed to me they had like a little moral. You know, just a little moral, not a big earth-shaking one. But I thought, isn't that nice? Because it was a family show, kids could tune in, and we don't have that on television anymore. We don't have goodness being pointed out, or a little sign going, this is the way to go. And I always respected them for that. And Danny, I had never seen as a nightclub performer, but he asked me and my husband to come to Las Vegas because he knew I'd never seen him. And I tell you, the man was a past master of a nightclub floor. He was magnificent. He could tell you a story that went on for 15 minutes and then and you were sitting there like, and come to the end of it and have a snapper that would have you screaming with laughter. He was extraordinary. And he used audiences like a great musician. He was really a past master. I'm so glad I got to see him on a nightclub floor. As wonderful as he was on television, in a nightclub, he was a genius, a genius. So I think that was probably my favorite. And I enjoyed a lot of them, but I think that was my favorite. Also, it was my first one. So, you know, a lot of times when it's the first, it lasts. Is that okay? Have you gone to sleep?
You're writing a book right now.
I don't know that it's a book, but I am doing my memoirs. And I urge everybody over the age of 70 to start doing it. And my older daughter is responsible because she called me one day and she said, Mama, do you remember how when Grandma died, my mother, you were so not only sad at her going, but as time went by, you couldn't think of the names of people, you know, friends of the family, a relative, a cousin over there. And she said, why don't you start putting down things so we won't have that problem when you go? And I thought, that's not a bad idea. So I have begun it. I spent 4 weeks in Jacksonville, Florida recently, and I spent 4 to 6 hours every day writing. And I've had a ball because I've met so many people that were in my life at one point or another, and they've come back because of my doing this memoir. And I'm just so thrilled. I have picked a tentative title, and it's called Dancing with the Skeletons. So it is Dancing with the Skeletons indeed, and I'm tapping like crazy. But I must say, it's a wondrous thing to look over your life and to suddenly see that you haven't done it all yourself. There have been a lot of people who helped. I think there's been a lot of help from upstairs. A lot of circumstances you did not create that have made things happen in your life that you never would have had happen. Never. And so it makes me feel very grateful, very humble, and quite excited at the number of people I'm rising up. It's very much fun. It's not depressing at all. It's very exhilarating. And I hope if it ever comes out, remember the skeletons.
Is there a little excerpt that you could tell us? It's a story maybe from...
Yes, there is a story, and it's a family story, so don't mind my being personal. When my husband and I moved back, in my case, to Los Angeles, we had 2 kids, my son Sean and my daughter Carrie. We then latterly had another daughter, Tara. So the kids were quite young when we moved to California, and we settled in Beverly Hills, thinking it a quaint little village. It was, in a very strange way. It just happened to be full of film stars, that's all. But I still remember they had buses going down in the lower parts of Beverly Hills, going past all the stars' home. Lucille Ball there, Jimmy Stewart there, there's a Ronald Coleman estate, there's Jose Ferrer and Rosemary Clooney, and up the street was Agnes Moorehead and Thomas Mitchell, and up on the street where we lived was, what's his name? Danny Kaye, and across the street were, the husband and wife, Tony Curtis and the darling girl. Thank you. And we were up at the end of the street, but we loved it because it was up a canyon and there were wonderful smells and you'd see birds and animals. It was great. But one time I was out of town, and Carrie went to school with Rosemary and Jose's kids. They had 5, I believe, and she went to Provo School in Beverly Hills with them. And I blame the Ferrer kids on this, because the old Michelle told her about how all the tour buses, they'd have these buses that just buy people click pictures and everything. And Jimmy Stewart used to come out and wave at everybody. But the Ferrer kids were smart. They put up a lemonade stand, and they sold lemonade. And then they got even smarter. They went into the garage and got old 8x10s of Rosemary and sold those. So you see the kind of companions my daughter grew up with. So I was out of town doing some theatrical thing at one point, and I got a panicky call from my husband who said, "You've got to get home." I said, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" He said, "I found Carrie out today selling tours of the home of the famous Pat Carroll in the street." Well, I knew he was upset, but I was like this. I thought it was hysterical, how enterprising. And he said, "I have to tell you something worse." I walked in and she was showing them my underwear drawer. Now, I don't blame him for being upset about that, you understand. But I said, "Darling, I understand. I will speak with her as soon as I get home." And I hung up the phone and I just had a good ha. I thought, that's hysterical. But I knew what it meant. You can't let kids get away with that. So I got home and I said, "Carrie, darling, might I speak with you in the bedroom?" She said, "Well, whenever you have that tone of kid, they know all come is the chopping block." So we went into the bedroom and she sat down. I said, "Honey, Daddy told me something I wasn't very pleased about. He said that you were out on the street with a sign saying, 'Take a tour of the home of the famous Pat Carroll,' and you'd yell at people in cars going by. And he said, 'You actually got business.'" And she said, "Yes, I did." And I said, "Well, honey, I have to explain something. A home is a very private place. It's where a family comes together and they live their lives. And it's not wrong to share, but most people keep their private lives private. And number 2, I am not famous." And she said, "Well, Mother, if you'd let me sell the tours, I could make you famous." And she's with me this weekend. God only knows what she'll be selling this weekend. But that is a true story.
She's not present right now because she's selling tours of your hotel room. Is there any more questions, please? Right there.
Hi Pat, how are you?
Where are you?
Right here.
Oh, there. I see you.
So, of course, a lot of us in this room are probably both big horror movie fans and Disney movie fans. So the obvious question is, before you were part of The Little Mermaid, what was your favorite Disney movie that made you love Disney so much? And then, of course, what's your favorite horror movie?
Well, I think my favorite Disney movie was the first one I saw, which was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And I have to say that from there on in, I was sold. Nobody had to tell me they were good. I knew it. No Disney thing would come out that I wasn't there first off with my little quarter. Yes, it did cost a quarter in those days. And I followed Disney ever since, and that's why I'm extremely proud to be in this particular Disney movie, which I think has everything. The score is like a Broadway score. The story goes back to what Disney did so beautifully. Fairy tales, folks, they aren't dead. They aren't dead. They're just lying dormant, waiting to be revived. So I have followed Disney ever since, but Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, I fear, is my favorite because it was my first. Now, as far as horror films, I'm afraid Frankenstein is it. That goes but go to a high darling. I plugged you, it's okay, God bless you. And that Boris Karloff, what a gentleman he was. I worked on a lot of game shows and talk shows, and Mr. Karloff would come on. He was a perfect gentleman and gentle. I mean gentle. And I thought, if you played Frankenstein, that took some acting. Because he was so gentle and nice and dear. I said everything right, didn't I? But true, but
Yes, right here in the front.
I had seen a few different versions of Ursula, and I was wondering if she always looked the way that she does now when you started that role, or if you had seen the different drawings that she started as and transformed through.
what a good question. I'll tell you, I think if we all had the chance to go to Disney Archives and study the early sketches of Ursula, and as she progressed, I think we'd all see a change in her, because I think the artists, as they go along, if they get imbued with a character, I think far more so, maybe musicians are second to that, they can improvise, and they do add things, and they do pluck a little here and tweak a little there. We might not know the difference, but they do, and I think it enhances it. I don't know for sure. I haven't noticed any drastic changes. I saw a few of the sketches for this 3D thing, and I think they're trying to, jazz her up a bit. It looked to me like it was, but of course I wasn't wearing my glasses. I can't tell. But I do think it's more than possible that that character, along with many other characters, changes in the artist's hands as they go along, and we may not see the finished product until the second or third release of the film, when they've had time to play with it and toy with it.
I'm not sure if it made it into, or they may have edited it out, but do you recall that Ursula was originally Triton's sister?
I don't remember that. I thought she was his love interest. I think she was in love with him. Doesn't that make sense?
That's a way different story.
Yeah, I do believe in one of the episodes, I don't think Ariel...
From the cartoon, from the series.
From the series. I think there was mention made of this, and this is why she's always so angry with him. Well, we can understand that, can't we? But I think that's the story, that they were lovers.
I had never known. Did anybody know that?
I knew that, yes. It's in the series that she's talking about. It does kind of a flashback and implies that Ariel is Ursula's daughter. Implies.
I didn't even know that.
I'm a giant Little Mermaid fan, so I've read the Christian Andersen version. I've done,
Yeah,
all that
yeah,
kind of
good
thing.
for
But
you.
Ursula was implied to be Ariel's mother, which is why she wanted her back.
Isn't that something? Well, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? I'm going to look at the movie again. I want to see all those implications.
Do you watch it ever?
I watch it if, say, the children of friends ask me to watch it with them, because they hear that I'm scary, and they feel if I'm there, I won't be scary. So I do that. Also, I'm looking at it again before the 3D version, because I don't know how they're going to make it into 3D. You know, I'm not a big 3D fan anyway, but particularly with Little Mermaid, why? I don't know why, you know, but I'm willing to jump into the experience and say, wow, that's great. But I have to look at the original again to see what difference will it make. You know, this is just me. I'm not doing publicity for it. It's just me saying, will it make a great deal of difference to the good that they're doing it 3D? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that, so I'll have to see it in its original form and then compare it.
I think it'll be interesting, at least with the depth in that movie, because there's a lot of scenes where they did the multiplane. It wasn't exactly the same technology, but they had a great depth in that movie. What did you think when you saw it the very first time? The very first time you sat down in the animation studio and watched it.
I didn't see it in an animation studio. I saw it in New York City at a screening room, all by myself, nobody, because I was supposed to do a promotional tour and I had not seen the film. So I asked the powers that be, might I see the film before I go out to talk about it? I have to have seen it somehow. So all by myself, I sat in this tiny, probably sat 14 people, screening room, and then first thing of Ursula came on, and I slid off the chair. I literally slid off the, what the hell was that? I mean, that's scary. That old girl is mighty scary, but I was overcome with the music, because that is a Broadway score. I was overcome with the overwhelming, finite work they did on the film. I mean, those sea scenes were impeccable. The palace scenes were magnificent. The detail was, but they are known for that, aren't they? They don't give up and just make a big splash. They really get in there and dig. I sat there all by myself and I thought, oh, am I lucky to be in this or what? And I was. And I thought, oh, the music was so wonderful. And I tell you, I knew what was going to happen when Ariel hugged her papa at the end, you know. I said, I'm going to see this in the theater because we're going to hear everyone in the house go, oh! And it happened. It happened, I swear to you. Every time I've seen it in a theater, from a little girl to the big girls like me. Oh, that's a very touching moment. That's wonderful. And Disney has never shied away from sentiment, which I love, because we're living in an age of non-sentiment. We're living in an age of violence. But to see sentiment on a screen that's sincere, not hokey or made fun of, is so moving and so touching to me, because it's the greatest part of us as human beings, as kindness is. You know, we could change the world if we did some kind act every day for somebody else we don't even know. I do believe that. And my mother told me before she passed away, she said, honey, do one thing for another human being every day of your life and you'll end up to be happy. I think she's right. That's what I think.
I don't think we're going to top that with anything further. I think this is a perfect place to applaud for Miss Pat Carroll. Visit her over in the autograph signing room. She is a lovely lady. Ladies and gentlemen, Pat Carroll.
You want a piggyback ride?
That would be
Thank you.